What would I do if I had an athlete like Isaiah who was trying to increase his vertical, but also wanted to go to the NBA? What's up, guys? My name is John Evans. I coach the highest jumper in the world. That is Isaiah Rivera. Isaiah, say hello. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about that. So I've listed a couple things here that I consider when I'm looking at a team sport athlete or an athlete that wants to increase their output, but also has other demands in their sport. So the first thing that I do, and I had to understand as a young coach when looking at this, because I was a track and field guy, is I had to understand the importance of checking boxes, meaning your skill work is training. So if I'm a basketball player or a volleyball player or a track and field athlete, the training that I do on the court is going to check certain boxes. For example, if I'm a basketball player and I'm playing for 2 hours a day on the court, then I'm getting my change of direction work in, right? I'm getting my acceleration work in. I'm getting jumps in. All of those qualities are going to address certain physiological qualities or certain kinetic and kinematic needs that your sport requires. And it's going to stress your physiology such that you don't need to readdress those qualities in the weight room or in plyometrics or other areas as a sports performance coach. Again, if I'm doing jumps, right? If I'm a volleyball player, I'm trying to do a lot of hitting or something like that in my training, then I'm already getting 60 to 80 to 100 contacts a day, potentially, from my sports practice or my skill work that I'm doing. I don't need to go into the weight room and add in any more plyometric volume. I probably don't even need to add in any more squats. I don't need to add in any more knee extension work because that work will probably end up hurting that athlete. So what I try to do is I make a list of what needs have to be addressed. So I do a proper needs analysis. And then after that needs analysis, I say, what is being checked by the sport in this needs analysis already and what is not? And I go through each of those different variables and then I write the program based on what is not being addressed. That is a big underlying process that I use to identify what an athlete actually needs. The more of a demand that there is on output, typically the less of a demand there's going to be on the actual sports skill. Meaning if I'm a power lifter, right, there's not as much skill involved in being and I know power lifter is going to be biased and say that there is a lot of sports skill involved. If you don't have strong muscles, you're not going to, no matter how good your technique is, you're not going to be able to lift maximal weights that would allow you to win competitions. The same thing's true in weightlifting. If I'm an Olympic weightlifter, my output, if I'm not powerful and I'm not strong, I don't care how good your technique is, you're not going to win a championship. You're not going to win a competition. If I'm a track and field athlete and I'm not fast, it doesn't matter how good your technique is, you're not going to win the 100-meter gold medal. You have to have the outputs that accompany your technique to be able to win. Now, vice versa, on the other end of this, the more predominant your skill or your sport is on skill, then the less output probably plays a role, meaning you can win, or if it's highly dependent on skill, then you don't need as many outputs. And remember, the 5 physical capacities are going to be endurance, speed, strength, coordination, and mobility. One thing to remember with this is that it is a continuum. So if I'm, a gymnast or something like that, maybe I fall somewhere in between these two points, right, in the middle, and then I require both output and skill. But for example, if I'm a tennis player, then odds are if I have the output of Usain Bolt or a world-class decathlete, I'm not going to beat Rafael Nadal in a tennis match just because I have all of my physical capacities at an insane level. The fact that the sport is highly dependent on skill is going to overcome the infinite amount of strength, speed, or power that you have. And so there is, I wouldn't say an inverse relationship between these two things, but there is a relationship between the needs analysis that you're doing and how important that output is, and then obviously what the skill work or the skill aspect of that is and the required outputs to do that thing. Again, if we look at gymnastics, which is kind of an interesting scenario where there's a lot of skill and a lot of output, you don't need as much strength as a power lifter, right? It's not like a gymnast can squat 700 pounds or 800 pounds. They're not a shot putter in terms of their output of strength. Even at their relative body strength, they're not going to clean and jerk double their body weight or something like that. I've personally never seen something to that degree. If you look at their standing vertical jump, it's not going to be super high. If you look at their 30-meter sprint time, it's not going to be crazy. So while they have an aspect of speed and they have an aspect of power, they require a certain amount of output, but there's still a very high premium on skill. So that's kind of a scenario where on this continuum, you know, it's not going to be this perfectly linear line where you require both skill and output. So using gymnastics as kind of the focus of an example of this, because basketball is a little bit easier, gymnastics is actually a really interesting one. If we were to go through and do this, I would say, what boxes am I checking by going to gymnastics? Am I getting a speed stimulus? Yes. Am I getting a strength stimulus? Maybe in a quarter squat to eighth squat position, in my lower body at least, yes. Am I getting a deep knee flexion stimulus? No, probably not. Am I getting a deep dorsiflexion stimulus? For sure. Meaning, am I loading my ankle in dorsiflexion? Am I getting a stimulus in knee flexion? Probably not. You're not going to see much of a stimulus there. Are your shoulders getting blasted? Yeah, if you're on the rings, you're going to get destroyed from every single position. Whether pulling yourself up, your shoulders are going through full angulations where you're under tension the whole time. So I'm addressing that, you know, stimulus, and that's obviously an important need. I probably don't need to go into the weight room and do a bunch of bench press or rows because they're already doing a lot of pressing and pulling in their sport. But where they are missing stuff is on the strength aspect of deep knee flexion. They're not really doing any deep knee flexion exercise, whether extension or flexion in the knee. So I need to address that a decent amount in their training. Now, what about plyos? Do I need plyos? No, because they're bouncing off the ground all the time in their sport. I probably don't need to add a lot of plyos. What about sprinting? Well, they're sprinting in their routine, whether if it's vault or something like that. They're sprinting a lot, so I don't need to add sprinting into their training. That's not going to benefit them, even though speed and power is such a high premium in the sport. Adding more of that volume is going to be detrimental to that athlete. So I would periodize around the things that I know they're not getting, and I would try to fill in the gaps that they have to allow them to increase their output, move them this way, which potentially also helps the skill work. Now, ideally, we want these ping pong players, even if there is a small need for output, we still want to improve that, right? Every little bit helps. If they're better endurance, maybe they can go longer in a ping pong match or change direction more effectively. Maybe the changes of direction aren't as high force, but they are still very fast. So maybe the rate of force development needs to be improved. And so it's really important to identify what that needs analysis of that sport is. Figure out what are they doing in their skill training or in their sports training on the court or on the field or whatever else. And then understanding that skill work is the training and checking off those boxes of their needs analysis and filling in the gaps. Thanks for watching, guys. If you want to see more information about how to become a better athlete, how to improve athleticism, and how to ultimately jump higher, run faster, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys later.